Hey, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to go through the technology priority area today from our new outdoor recreation plan, Recreation for All. For those of you who aren't as familiar with the outdoor recreation plan, just a really quick overview. The overall vision for the plan is that enjoyable outdoor recreation is welcoming to all and accessible in every Pennsylvania community. And I think you'll see as we go through the recommendations and the actions for the technology priority area that these ideas of welcoming to all and accessible, making the outdoors accessible, are key parts of what we tried to do with our recommendations and actions for technology. The plan's divided into 5 broad priorities, so technology is just one of the 5. There are 4 other webinars like this one that are going through those priorities in more detail, so I'd encourage you to check those out if you want to find out more detail about each of the priorities. And then within the priorities, they're further broken down into 20 recommendations and 70 actions. So today in this presentation, we'll be looking at the recommendations and actions specific to technology, and then talking a little bit about how we're already starting to implement some of those actions. If you want to learn more about the plan, a really good place to start is DCNR's Outdoor Recreation Plan webpage. You can see the link on the screen here. And this is a really great resource, not just for finding the plan itself, but also for finding links to all of the tools that go into the plan. So we did a lot of research, a lot of audience surveys and public surveys as part of developing this plan. And the results from all of those are available right on that page. It's a great one-stop shop for all your outdoor rec plan needs. If you're looking for more of just a general overview, the DCNR communications team put together a really excellent story map overview, very graphic heavy, not a lot of text. And so a really easy way to get into the outdoor recreation plan and see what's in there without having to get through all the verbiage. And if you are someone who would like a paper copy, we do have some of those available. Send an email to Lori Ross in our office with your mailing address, and she can get a copy out to you. So let's start diving into the technology aspect of the plan. And it's important to start things off by thinking a little bit about what do we mean when we say technology? What are we actually going to be talking about? Because technology can mean a lot of things when it comes to outdoor recreation. It can be the things that we might think of intuitively, like smartphones and software, but even things like, say, a compass, our form of technology. So we are talking about really digital technology in this priority area. You're going to hear me talk a lot about particularly smartphones, but also a lot about data, about software, about websites, about computers, drones, those types of topics. That's more what we're talking about in terms of this technology priority area. And I just thought, as far as getting us started here, that this would be a good inspirational quote. Richard Louv writes in his book, The Nature Principle, the best preparation for the 21st century may be a combination of natural and virtual experience. And I felt like this is really powerful. And Richard Louv, he wrote Last Child in the Woods, really a visionary in terms of encouraging people to get outside, especially children to get outside. And yet even Richard Louv is recognizing in this book that technology is not going anywhere. It's not something that we can defeat or wish away. It's here, and it affects how people live their lives. And so thinking about how we see that as an opportunity at the same time that we're dealing with some of the challenges that it can create for outdoor recreation is really important to consider as we go along and look at the recommendations and actions. And it's also really important to think about just the pace of technological change and what a difference just a few years makes. This is the first outdoor recreation plan where technology is a priority area. And you can really start to see why it was so important for us to include this when we look at some statistics. So this is mobile phone ownership in the United States from 2014 compared to 2020. And as you can see, just 6 years ago in 2014, only about half of US adults had a smartphone. Today, it's more than 4 in 5. And this is a huge change. This really affects the ways that people interact with technology in a whole host of ways to have this powerful computing device right in your pocket. But importantly for us, from an outdoor recreation standpoint, it affects the ways that people are interacting with the outdoors. And just a few examples of that. So 4 in 5, about 80% of people are using the internet to find places to go or read reviews. So this is before they even head out into the woods. They're using their devices to figure out where they want to go. Once they're there, about half are using GPS. About 40%, 2 in 5, are posting outdoor recreation experiences to social media. And about 1 in 3 are using a fitness tracker like a Fitbit. And although none of these look at it specifically, my guess would be that with all of these, the percentage of these people who are using smartphones is pretty high and increasing over time. When we say 44% are using GPS, most of those people are probably not using a standalone GPS device. They're probably using the GPS in their phone. So it's a even greater connection, particularly to the smartphone aspects of technology. And I think it's one that we're only going to see even more so going forward. We're going to see a greater prevalence of mobile devices, particularly smartphones, in outdoor recreation. And that has impacts. It impacts both the user experience and it also impacts the management experience for the people who are managing these public lands. And so in our recommendations and actions, we tried to examine both audiences and look at what are some ways that we can improve the experiences for both of these groups. So let's actually get down to it and start looking at some of these recommendations and actions. Our first recommendation is to increase mobile connectivity in outdoor recreation. And I can understand if this recommendation at first blush kind of raises your blood pressure a little bit. I know if you're like me, you may be thinking, hey, I go to the woods to get away from all of that technology. And I completely understand that. But remember back to that vision statement for the plan about wanting our outdoor recreation opportunities in the state to be welcoming to all, to be accessible. When we surveyed Pennsylvanians, we found that 1 in 4 were less likely to participate in outdoor recreation if a facility didn't have Wi-Fi or cell coverage. This is largely a safety concern. People want to be able to call for help if they need to. And among younger audiences, those age 18 to 34, this ratio increases to 1 in 3. So in terms of making our spaces welcoming to all, accessible to all, if a facility doesn't have cell coverage, it's not welcoming and not accessible to a large and increasing swath of the population. Now, that's not to say that we need to have cell coverage everywhere. Don't necessarily need to have great service in the deepest wilderness areas, but it does mean that we want to take a look at things like trailheads and park offices. Do those sorts of areas have coverage so that people have an option if they need to connect while they're there? And that you'll see is reflected in the actions for this recommendation. So our first one is to look at priority areas for expanding cell phone coverage. And again, so this is not about, we need to have coverage in deep wilderness areas, but instead it's looking at things like trailheads, park offices, parking lots. And then developing a priority list of these areas and partnering with organizations to sponsor hotspots. Some of this work is already happening at the state level with our state parks. We want to see that work expand and grow over the next 5 years. And then the third piece of this is more about managing expectations so that people know what they're getting into. If they want to get away from technology for a while, we want them to be able to know where they can go to do that. But by the same token, for those who are expecting that coverage, we want them also to be aware of that. So using the tools that we have, many of our parks and forests and public lands have websites, putting that sort of information up front for users so that when they are going online to see where they want to go, they know right away whether that area is going to have coverage or not, so they know what to expect. Our second recommendation looks at developing best practices for emerging outdoor recreation technologies. And this really came out of a survey that we did of outdoor recreation providers in the state. So think, say, like park managers and recreation directors. About half of these folks told us that keeping up with technology changes was a significant or major challenge for them. So what we want to do is look at developing an annual training session for these folks on technology, help to keep them up to speed. How are users using technology in new and different ways on public lands? And what are some strategies for addressing conflicts where they occur? And then also from the user's perspective, disseminating educational content to help people use technology appropriately. One of the things that we've seen during the pandemic is a huge increase in the number of people who are using our public lands, and that's great. But it can also lead to conflicts from people who aren't necessarily as connected with the outdoors as some others, and may be new to recreating in the outdoors, may not necessarily be aware of some of the etiquette around some of the technology that they may be using. So making some of that information more widely available to folks. And you'll notice with both of these, and really throughout the entire technology priority, there's a focus on existing resources. A lot of this content already exists in various forms. We don't want to reinvent the wheel in a lot of cases. We're not the best people to be doing that. In most cases, we want to just take something that already exists and give it a bigger platform, share it with more people. Our third recommendation is really all about data. And you see on the screen here about using technologies to support health goals and find places to recreate outdoors. This is all about data, especially geographic data, GIS or Geographic Information Systems data. And in Pennsylvania, we're fortunate we have a lot of really good outdoor recreation data, but we want to keep that data up to date. It's only as useful as it is current. So we want to keep an eye on those databases, make sure that they're staying current, correct them where there are errors, and keep them being really useful to folks. An example of that is the 10-minute walk access analysis that you can see a screenshot of here. We're going to go through this in a little more detail in a live demo coming up after this presentation. But we also, again, getting back to the idea of existing resources, we want to look at the use of existing apps, existing programs, how to expand their use. Places where we already have resources that are making a connection between outdoor recreation and health, we want to look for ways to expand those. And then start to make better management decisions based on data. So looking at our data on recreation locations, and then pairing that with other data, say on health factors, to help us make smarter decisions about where to invest in new parks and trails. An example of that might be pulling some of this health data from the CDC. This is the 500 Cities project that the CDC manages. And it basically looks at the 500 largest cities in the US and provides neighborhood level statistics on a variety of health factors. In this image here, we see adult obesity for the city of Pittsburgh. We could use data like this combined with our outdoor recreation data to get better senses of where might we want to invest in new parks or new trails in Pittsburgh and other areas around the state. Our final recommendation, enrich the understanding of the natural, cultural, and historic aspects of the outdoors through technology. This recommendation really gets back to that Richard Louv quote, right? This is all about how do we look at technology not just as a challenge, but as an opportunity. How is it something that we can use to actually enhance the outdoor recreation experience rather than something that competes with it? So again, going back to the idea of existing resources, we want to look for existing apps and tools that help users navigate, learn about, enjoy the outdoors, and then develop a guide that can be updated as time goes on with some of these resources to help people be more aware of some tools that can help enhance their outdoor recreation experience. We also want to look at our interpretive signage. We want to look at how do we make that more technology friendly? How do we allow people to go deeper into their learning experience when they're out at these places? So maybe it's something as simple as some QR codes on interpretive signs that allow people to dive deeper and gain more information than just what can be put on that interpretive sign. And then we want to find ways for outdoor enthusiasts to gather and share their experiences. This has become even more important in an era of COVID when we can't all get together in person the way we would like. We want to look for some technology-based opportunities for folks to gather and really form a community around outdoor recreation. To wrap this up, let's talk a little bit about how you can help implement this priority. There are a lot of steps that you can take to help move this priority forward, even if you don't feel like you're a very techno-savvy person. That's okay. The first and probably the most important is think about your organization's websites, your e-newsletters, basically all of your electronic content, make sure it's mobile friendly. More and more people are interacting on the internet just through their phones. They're not using a computer, a full-size desktop or laptop. They're using a phone or maybe a tablet. And so if your websites and your e-newsletters aren't mobile friendly, you're going to be missing out on a substantial and increasing percentage of your audience. Similar to how we talked about with the state lands of providing more information to the public about cell phone service on lands, for those of you who are land managers, consider putting some information on your website about cell coverage at your various preserves or properties. And as you're using various web maps, if you see gaps or errors in the data, let folks know. Very often the web maps that include this kind of outdoor recreation data will include links or methods for correcting data, so that if you find something that's a mistake, you can either fix it yourself or let the managers of that data know that there's an error so that they can fix it. And again, the data that we put together is only as useful as it is current and kept up to date and corrected. And that really takes local knowledge. So we really rely on folks as they're using these resources, if they spot errors, to let us know. And finally, getting back to that recommendation 2, where we talked about sharing information about technology and sharing experiences with technology and outdoor recreation. If you're a park manager or anybody else, you have experience with a particular recreation technology, a strategy for managing a conflict that might arise from different forms of technology in the outdoors, share that. That can be really useful information, letting folks know different ways and different strategies of dealing with those challenges as they occur. We're going to transition now to a demonstration portion of the presentation. We're going to talk about this outdoor recreation access map. This is a project that started out as just a research project of the outdoor recreation plan, but it's really grown. Folks have gotten really excited about the potential for this data to make a big difference in the way that we invest in outdoor recreation in the state, and how we identify places for new parks, trails, and other recreation. So let's transition out of this. And let's start right here at the Pennsylvania's Outdoor Recreation Plan webpage. This is the link that I mentioned at the beginning of the video as a place where you can get a lot of really good information about the Outdoor Recreation Plan, including the PDF that you see there. But if you scroll down, you can see there are lots of different PDFs on all of the different studies, focus groups, surveys that went into this. For the outdoor recreation access map, you'll want to go down to this one that says supporting studies and research, and then the section, the Trust for Public Land. We partnered with the Trust for Public Land on this project. And then the link to the map is here in the second paragraph. When you arrive at the web map, you'll be able to get fingertip access to all of the data for this project. And there's also a lot of really good background information. You can learn more about why it's so important for there to be close to home outdoor recreation access for Pennsylvanians. There's also a how-to video. So if you need a refresher, you can check out that video and get more information about how to use this web map. The analysis that we did, there were 3 analyses that we did. One was a 10-minute walk analysis that looked at outdoor recreation generally, so parks, trails, as well as open spaces like state forest lands. That data is available at both the county and the municipal level. There's also a 10-minute drive analysis that looked specifically at trails and trailheads, and then a similar 10-minute drive analysis that looked at recreational water access. And statistics for these are both available at the county level. There's also a lot of really good next step information here. If you want to understand the methods more, we're not going to go into those in this brief presentation today, but there's a full report that walks you through all the detailed methods. If you're a GIS user, all the data that's on this site can be downloaded through POSDA, so you can combine it with your own data for more detailed analyses. And once your community is ready to get started with a project, the DCNR Bureau of Recreation and Conservation is a great resource for grants and technical assistance to help you implement projects like new parks and trails. There's also a really great planning tool from the Trust for Public Land called ParkServe that, again, in the interest of time, we won't go through today, but there's a link to that as well as another really good resource for helping you plan out new park and trail locations. For now, let's take a look at the 10-minute walk to a county web map. All of the web maps have a really similar layout, so we're only going to go through one of them today. But once you've learned how to use one of these, you'll be able to use all 4 of the web maps with relative ease. So when the web map opens, you'll see this one has jumped right away to Adams County. But this one is set up at a county level analysis. The first thing you'll want to do is type in the name of your county or search through the drop-down list to find it. I'll start by typing in North. I'm going to look for Northampton County. Now notice that sometimes the search may not actually show options. That's okay. Just click on search more and it'll go through a search and give you the results. So there's Northampton. So let's go ahead and click on that. We'll give a moment for that to load. And depending on your connection speed, you may find that this can take a moment to load. There it goes. So once you've selected your county or municipality, if you're doing the municipal map, the map will automatically pan to that region and select it. And then it will also give you statistics over here on the right to look at who has access and who doesn't have access in that area. So you can see things like the total population served, percentages, as well as different demographic breakdowns by things like age, income level, and race and ethnicity. You can also see summary statistics compared to statewide averages down here at the bottom of the page. You can also zoom in on this map if you want to get a more nuanced view. So for example, we can turn off the selection to brighten up the map a little bit. And then let's zoom in on this area east of Bethlehem. The areas in pale blue are areas of access. The areas in this pale yellow, orange, and red are areas of different level of need based largely on population density. We could change the base map, say to an aerial image. And this will let us start to really see what the underlying areas look like and where there might be opportunities to put in new parks or trails to fill in these gaps in access. So that about wraps up my portion of the presentation. In part 2 of this session, Irina Beal from WeConservePA is going to be talking a little bit more about some of the GIS and data projects that their organization is working on to help implement the outdoor recreation plan. Thank you all very much again for attending the technology webinar, and have a great day.
Thank you, Josh, for the introduction. Hello, my name is Irina Beal. I'm the GIS analyst at WeConservePA, formerly known as PALTA, the Pennsylvania Land Trust Association. Today, I'll be providing you with examples of GIS mapping projects. There are a myriad of organizations working continuously to preserve and protect agricultural and forested land and open space for future generations. These organizations work to acquire land or become easement holders to protect properties to remain open and undeveloped. Looking at properties at each organization's website only gives a snapshot of the full conservation effort. To expand upon this, WeConservePA has compiled the PA Conserved Land Geodatabase and Web Map. Federal agencies such as the National Park Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and Department of Agriculture manage some of the land within the state, such as Allegheny National Forest and Raystown Lake. State lands, such as state forests, state game lands, and state parks account for over 3 million acres, or 60% of all conserved lands within Pennsylvania. Local municipalities in each county, of which there are 67, preserve land for community park, county parks, and local conservation areas. Over 80 land trusts preserve land in the form of conservation easements, acquisitions, and agricultural easements. The Nature Conservancy and Western Pennsylvania Conservancy preserves a majority of this land. WeConservePA hosts several online web maps that help land conservationists and the public to see the big picture of where land is actively conserved in the state, where conservation grants have been awarded, where land trusts, watersheds, environmental advisory councils, and trail groups operate, and where opportunities exist for riparian buffer planting projects. The map on the left is a composite of all mapped conserved land within the state as of the end of last year. The map on the right is a categorical representation of conservation groups and easement types that I mentioned previously. The PA Conserved Land Map is interactive and provides more detail about the property and links to organizational websites for further exploration. This is an ongoing process to compile data across multiple organizations throughout the state into one place. You may view all the conserved lands at once or view each type selectively. By selecting the small arrow at the bottom of the page, you can expand the table that displays features within your current viewing window. Zooming in, we see from left to right the counties of York, Lancaster, and Chester. In this view, we can see a large mixture of owners and types of land conservation, although the largest in this area is farmland preservation through agricultural easements and land trust held conservation easements. We can see more about the land holdings by selecting them. Here we see the Fox Hollow Nature Preserve owned by Lancaster Conservancy. By selecting more information, it will take you to the owner's or easement holder's main website. To the east of this is the State Game Land 288, managed by the Pennsylvania Game Commission. To the east is Mardick Township Park, a very large forested park with hiking trails, and it allows hunting. For more information about land use regulations, users are encouraged to visit the main website for the latest updates. These web pages are continuously being amended, so check back for new links or copy the park name into a search engine to learn more. On the west bank of the Susquehanna River lies Susquehannock State Park. 4 discrete properties make up the entire park system, while the main park on the east bank, not shown here, is 224 acres. Further south is one of the many York County agricultural easements. I will now move on to the Conservation Grants interactive web map that covers the following funds: Keystone Recreation, Park and Conservation, Environmental Stewardship Fund, and the Land and Water Conservation Fund. As you can see, this is a busy layout. I'll walk you through a little of it, but I encourage you to explore it yourself at a later time. The points on are locations of projects funded by the grants, such as Keystone, ESF, Land Conservation Fund. The chart below updates according to the view of the map and follows the same color code. The filters on the left side of the screen allow you to constrain the display parameters. All of these filters are additive, so the data can be highly refined to display what you are specifically interested in viewing. The panels on the right summarize the map's display accounting for all active filters for total amount of grants funded, number of projects funded, and numbers of acres conserved within your viewing window. For example, let's explore all grants other than the Keystone Fund grant that is still open within the last 5 years within the Delaware River watershed. Here we see 25 projects as of March 2020 when it was last updated, showing $600 million of grants and 60% of them from the Environmental Stewardship Fund. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the graph of the expenditures, total expenditures by year within your viewing window. Similar maps exist that summarize and display projects funded by the Keystone Fund and success stories from the Environmental Stewardship Fund. The next map we'll be looking at is which groups are active in which part of the state. There are several group types to explore, from the land trust to watershed associations to environmental advisory councils. We'll look at land trust service areas today. A list of land trusts by county is also available. The first list you will see in the upper left-hand corner of the map will be the land trusts that operate statewide. We can specify a location by address, city, town, or in this case, county. We see here there are 4 local and regional land trusts that operate within Centre County. By selecting Centre County Farmland Trust, we see that they operate solely within one county. The links provided open a new window to either the organization's website or its profile and information hosted by WeConservePA. If we were then to select North Central Pennsylvania Conservancy, we see a larger service area comprising of many counties. Again, we can see the organization profile along with the counties in which it operates, the year founded, and total acres conserved. These profile pages can be updated by the organization and are reflective of their responses to the biennial land trust census. The final project I will speak on is a riparian buffer prioritization project. Riparian planting projects, or planting trees along streams and waterways, falls under a number of sustainable system goals listed in the REP plan. The goals listed mention ecological responsibility, stormwater mitigation, and water quality enhancements, all of which riparian buffer zones can address. A riparian forest buffer is a vegetated zone that separates upland from a waterway, mainly a stream or river. The land immediately adjacent to the water is vegetated with large trees and transitions to smaller vegetation before becoming a field or development. Where is a good place to plant streamside forests to improve water quality? Some streamside forests benefit water quality more than others. This project combines high-resolution land cover data with soils, topography, land use, and climate data to evaluate more than 200,000 potential streamside forest planting opportunities across Pennsylvania. We'll set a few filters to narrow our search, which includes low vegetation areas within 100 feet of impaired stream and on conserved land. There are more filters than are displayed here, and it is highly customizable. As we zoom in, we see more detail about the surrounding landscape, such as watersheds, urban footprints, and conserved properties. The purple are land trust conservation easements, and the orange are agricultural farm easements. In this area, the highest priority zone is seen in light green. There are 6 priority scores, and in this case, the light green represents the priority score of 2 to 2.5. In this view, you can see the high priority areas are on farmlands since we set the filter to do so. In this case, the north bank of this riparian buffer intersects with a Lancaster County agricultural east property. Selecting this polygon shows it has a priority score of 2.05 and encompasses 1.71 acres. As we set our priority to show buffers along impaired streams and on conservation agricultural easements, you can see that these attributes here. Thank you all for attending this session. We will now take questions for Josh and myself.